Steve started to talk defensive line, and there were a couple comments made in the chat about our buddy Steve Dace from Michigan Podcast, who is likened Jim Knowles to Don Brown, and he's served that up for me directly. And I said, I just believe that Jim Knowles is more advanced than Don Brown, and I just think that he understands the difference between the Big 12 and the Big 10. He understands he's in a different, more physical league. He also understands that he has an upgrade in talent and personnel. He also understands that he can't sit in the same defense regardless of what happens in any one game situation and just play the same defense against everyone over and over and over, whether that be an adjustment from game to game or an adjustment within game. But that was brought up a few times in the chat. But this is going to be one of the more, whether I was a Buckeyes fan or not, one of the more interesting storylines at the elite level in college football for me. Jim Knowles' defensive performance this year, I'm going to be fascinated by.
He's had 1 year. He's had 1 year, and everybody's ready to go nuts. Ohio State's defensive metrics were all better last year than the year before. Now, I'm not blind to the fact that Ohio State gave up too many big plays. Is a defense that is built around giving up 5 or 6 or 7 big plays necessarily what you need to have in this league? No, you've got to get that number down. We certainly saw some aggressive play calling that was probably too aggressive, that put Ohio State in bad positions. We certainly saw opportunities where Ohio State had to get opponents off the field only to have defenders fall down. So there is plenty of fault to be assigned around the table. But everything that Jim Knowles did at Oklahoma State, that was a multi-year process. I think that if you see Ohio State build upon what it had last year, limit the big hits, and maybe just stay on your feet, I think things are going to be significantly better. I think it just makes Michigan enthusiasts feel better. One of us to sit there and label Jim Knowles as Don Brown, who inexplicably took Michigan backward, not forward. I think Jim Knowles is taking Ohio State forward in terms of what the numbers are, but yes, we could scratch off some of, Rutgers and some of these other things. It's what happens against Notre Dame. It's what happens against Michigan. It's what happens in the postseason that people are going to be focused on. But I just think it's a lazy comparison to make, and really, I understand that it's just a matter of trying to needle Ohio State people.
I think one thing to keep in mind when we talked to Jim Knowles on Monday, he talked about self-reflection and understanding that you don't need to be as aggressive as they were last year. And he's talked about introducing more coverages that keep things in front of the Ohio State defense. And I mentioned this on the Buckeye Weekly podcast yesterday or whenever, sometime this week. I don't recall us hearing him say anything about baking in this year any 5 big plays. There's been no talk about 5 big plays is understood. It's going to happen. We'll work with that. And you've heard more about just stopping big plays and not being okay with a certain number. So there's been a streamlining of what is acceptable, what is allowable, and really, I think I wrote about this the other day. Like Jim Knowles doesn't need to coach like he's still at Oklahoma State, just like Don Brown didn't need to coach like he was still at Boston College or whatever. You don't need to create as much chaos through scheme. You can allow your players, your defensive line to do that for you. And I think Jim Knowles will do that and not put the defensive backs in such a dangerous position this season. At least that's what he's saying.
Bizzer's chiming in with a little super chat contribution here. Let's see if I can wade through that. I may need some help. Here we go. Bizzer says, Dem boys said Buckeyes wasn't fine a win but they did. Michigan be cheating. Hey, can't come up with that one. Off if we keep it a buck. Buckeyes taking it all this year. Yes, of course, this year. Sorry, I'm not hip enough to have caught that the first time. Yes, on God. So Bizzer's confident. That's what I get out of that.
I think Bizzer's having a seizure.
But I'm going
I
to go
don't
with
speak
Bizzer's
gibberish. I'm
confident.
sorry.
You know, it does raise an interesting question. Would Michigan have won these last 2 years against Ohio State if Jim Harbaugh wasn't breaking all kinds of NCAA rules and have gotten him now suspended? Is that been the secret to Michigan's success? The cheating, the constant blatant cheating in the face of the NCAA with nobody at Michigan taking responsibility until they're forced to. I think, is that what we're talking about? I
Damn
think
dirty
that's probably
cheaters.
it's been perhaps it has been confirmed by Ward Manuel himself for imposing a 3-game suspension on Jim Harbaugh. Also, regarding this suspension, so Michigan goes to the NCAA and says they agree like a 4-game suspension, and then the NCAA is like, actually, we don't agree to that. So then Michigan's like, okay, let's just go back to the drawing table. Let's think what can we propose that will make the NCAA happy. They didn't like the 4-game suspension, so now here's our new. They're going to slide the piece of paper over on the table. They've written a number down. It's like, I think you'll like this number that we've written down. They slide it over on the table. The NCAA takes a look at it, and it's 3 games. The negotiation is going the wrong way. If the NCAA says no, then Michigan's like, okay, I'll scribble that number out, put another number down, slide it over, and now it's 2 games. This is not the math that the NCAA is looking for.
That's how it works on Pawn Stars. I mean, if you sit there and you go up and you're negotiating with Chumley, I mean, you need to, that's just kind of how it works. And apparently the NC2A is Chumley.
Yeah. Memo to whoever's doing the Big Ten schedule next year: don't front load any Big Ten games for Michigan, because he's going to need another 3 games off probably to start the if he's still there to start the 2024 season, because somebody made the note that they're turning their roster over after this season, and will he even want to stick around? So guess we'll have to wait and see.
It's the first 3 games this year, and it'll be the last 3 games the following year or something like that. I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say appalling, because I don't really care that much, to be quite honest, but it's baffling how they think that 3 is greater than 4. I just don't understand.
Yes, they were saying, yes, it's unacceptable. The 4. You're right. We did that. That is a little too harsh. Here's the 3. Yes.
We offered too many games, and the NCAA is like, no. We couldn't possibly. That gets back to the Pawn Stars thing where somebody takes something in. Here's this katana blade. I'll take $50 for it. And they're like, well, actually, this is from like 1,700. We'll give you 1,000. That's kind of what Michigan is doing, or whatever. But the second game of the season for Michigan next year is Texas. So,
that's a toughie.
They don't want none of that SEC smoke.
Yeah.
Assuming it doesn't get canceled.
And just to be clear, I'm about 98% sure on this. When Urban Meyer was suspended in 2018, he was out of the football operation for 3 weeks, correct? As opposed to coaching the team all week and then having to get lost on Saturday.
Yeah, he wasn't even going to the facility, was he?
Yeah.
Corey Dennis was having to go home and explain it to him every day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to Harbaugh, I don't know what this restriction is going to be, like just during game time or all of Saturday, last communication with the team on Friday night, and then pick it up on Sunday morning. I don't know. But
what's his thing? He likes, I heard one thing on Sirius, he likes to breed chickens or grow chickens in the chicken coop in his backyard. So he'll spend his Saturday afternoons in the shaded backyard by the chicken coop, throwing chicken feed to the chickens. That'll be what he'll be doing.